vengeance!
Hit the pace car! What for? Because you hit every other damn thing out there. I want you to be perfect.
When I'm driving, I got a guy on the radio who talks to me. It's him. He talks to me.
Well, I wanna be a race car driver. Pretty girls eating from my hand, yeah. Wanna live a life of fun and danger. No sweater working for the man, alright. Well, I wanna be a firefighter. Cool-headed when the heat is on, yeah. Save my baby from the burning building. Take her home and put the sprinklers on, alright.
No, he didn't slam you, he didn't bump you, he didn't nudge you. He rubbed you. And rubbing, son, is racing.
Hey race fans, welcome to the Hoobazoo Radio Network and welcome to Drafting the Circuits. My name is Frank Santoroski. I'll be your host for the next hour as we go over everything racing from this past week and preview next week for you. Before we get to that, let me introduce you to the panel tonight. With me is Mr. Gray Warren from Richard Childress Racing, Motorsports Tribune's Seth Eggert. I have our resident Formula One analyst, Richard Youden, in the house, and our guest panelist from Pit Lane Parlay, Mike Joachim, in the house. How is everybody tonight?
Very good. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, no problem.
Very good.
All right, great.
Very good.
Great to speak with everybody. So, big weekend of racing. NASCAR had its night race in Bristol, and the Indycars had a 500-miler at Pocono. So let's open up with IndyCar. Pretty intense wreck there between Robert Wickens, Ryan Hunter-Reay, also involved in there, Hinchcliffe, Pietro Fittipaldi. All thoughts are with young Robert Wickens at the time. The crash was, if you've seen it, was a very violent impact. Got up over the safer barrier into the catch fence, which shredded the car apart. He has multiple injuries to two broken ankles, a broken leg, injuries to one of his arms, but some bruised lungs. But the most concerning is the spinal cord injury that he underwent surgery for Monday night. They put some titanium screws and steel rods in there. And there's still, not a lot of information coming out as to the severity of the injury. These things take time to do. So, suffice to say, all of our thoughts are with Robert, his family, with his team. And the team, Schmidt-Peterson, has made the decision on the short week to not run the 6 car at all. A couple factors that went into that decision. First and foremost, team owner Sam Schmidt, who was incidentally is wheelchair bound due to a spinal cord injury he suffered in 2000 in his racing career, is out of respect for Robbie, number one. Number two, he's contacted the sponsors and let them know what he wants to do. All the sponsor partners are on board. Nobody is forcing them to run that car or saying a breach of contract or anything. They're all behind the decision to just set that car down. Also, on the short week, Hinchcliffe's car was badly damaged. Wickens' chassis was a total write-off. Just the prep time to get one car ready, much less both, on the short week was going to be tough, as IndyCar will be in Gateway this Saturday. So now, Mike, you had a chance to watch the race, and I guess the one thing we didn't mention is that Alexander Rossi from Andretti Autosport took his third win of the year, tightening up the points battle. I think he's within 29 or 30 points of Scott Dixon now. Say, Mike?
29 points now. Yeah, I mean, he put on a clinic, even despite the difficult circumstances, restarting the race, lapping all but the first 4 cars. So he put on a great show. He's showing that he's becoming a legitimate championship contender, not just this year, but in years going forward.
Yeah, I like how you use the word clinic, because when he won at Mid-Ohio, there was said he put on a road racing clinic, and now he's put on a 500-mile oval racing clinic. It seems he just all he's missing is the short oval clinic, and then he'll be the professor. So
where are they this weekend?
Gateway this
there
weekend.
You go.
Well, that's intermediate oval, yeah. So, but I mean, Rossi looks as strong as any of them there. Power just couldn't get close to him all day. There were some concerns over the, some unhappy drivers with the aero package say it's still pretty hard to pass. So what were your thoughts on the aero package and the quality of the show?
Yeah, they're not wrong. There definitely needs to be a little bit of work. I think not only on the aero package, but both Scott Dixon and Will Power tested it at Indianapolis. I guess it was probably right around a week ago, or maybe 2 weeks ago at this point, with a different tire compound and a little bit more tweaking to the front wing, and we're very happy with it. Obviously, they can't turn around and run that in a week and a half later than at Pocono. It was a step in the right direction. The wickers that they added onto the front wing, and there were, from my grid walk before the race, about 4 or 5 different combinations of wickers that teams were using. So it helped a little, but as Will Power and Scott Dixon both said after the race, it wasn't quite enough to really be able to challenge for the win there that Power needed. But both drivers said, and I'm in full agreement in this, IndyCar is led now by a team that will take time and figure things out, test it, and really get it on the right direction. So I believe next year the super speedways will be much better because now they have a year of data to go off of, and Jay Fry and Bill Pappas and team are smart guys.
Yeah, we've just got to take this in stride and realize that, with the new Universal Aero Kit, everybody's learning, and it's, not everything is going to be right off the bat. We saw a snoozer at Phoenix, but we saw a pretty darn good race at Iowa, in my mind anyway, behind the lead car. With that being said, let's talk about the start. We had 2 incidents. There's the one incident at the initial start, and then the big incident at the second start. Then after the race resumed after the repairs to the fence, which we'll talk about that in a little bit too. The race went caution-free once it got going the second time. But the first start, and we saw this in Mid-Ohio, where they felt like Rossi backed up the field. And then I believe it was Scott Dixon that kind of accused Will Power of doing the same thing here at Pocono. Said he kind of backed up the field, wasn't keeping pace, didn't accelerate fast enough, however you want to put it, which caused the cars at the back there, namely Piggott and Graham Rahal, to have a little collision there. Now, Power, for his part, right, he says, look, I was doing everything I was supposed to be doing. They said the yellow speed is 107 miles an hour. He said I was going 107 miles an hour. He says I didn't accelerate late. If anything, I accelerated early. And then Team Penske released the data from the car that showed that Will was absolutely right. So is this more of just a matter of the guys in the back getting a little too anxious and then throw the blame at the guy in the front?
100% yes. I mean, the data showed exactly that. In the post-race press conference, the printout naturally is downstairs in my house here. Scott Dixon, admitted, he said, "Listen, I didn't know that. You're 100% right, Will." And I mean, if you look at the replay of Graham Rahal, he jumps about 8 seconds before any other car. 8 seconds might be an exaggeration, but he just punts Spencer Piggott right into the wall. So you feel for Piggott there, because I thought he was primed to have a decent race, and obviously, as you saw, it affected Rahal the rest of the way. He wasn't really able to get anything going, but I don't fault Will Power at all for that. The data backs it up, and I mean, really, to me, it's just Graham Rahal trying to get a little too aggressive off the bat.
Just Graham being Graham. Go ahead, Gray.
I think the whole thing at the start was a byproduct of the type of racing we saw. These guys knew that passing was going to be tough, and you had to make hay on the restart or the start. You had to. That's where you were going to make your move, because once the field ran a lap and got strung out, we saw what happened. The race ran caution-free because actually nobody ran close enough to anybody to get into trouble the rest of the day. So that's what these guys were anticipating. They wanted to make their move early on while the field was bunched up to get some track position. And that's what led to the first two incidents in the race. You saw the aggressive move that Rossi made at the start when they did go back to green from the first incident. He drove down into turn one and took the lead. And, of course, Wickens was trying to do the same thing. He was trying to improve his position as much as he could on that first lap, and he got into trouble. So, yeah, I think what we saw was a byproduct of the aero package that we saw this weekend, and the guys were trying to compensate for it at the start.
I can't disagree with that at all.
No, I can't disagree with that
Yeah,
either.
and I mean, we see the same thing typically in NASCAR. You know, NASCAR is an aero-dependent series, too, to a degree. And we see races, particularly on the mile and a half, where, you know, the lead car has such a clean air advantage that, you know, in fact, we saw essentially the same race at Michigan in the Cup cars the week before. The cars run at station. They essentially run the same speed, and they run at station the whole time, so there's really not a lot of movement in it, and it becomes a track position race. And the car out front in clean air just essentially drives away. So I think IndyCar is experiencing some of the same things that NASCAR is going through right now. Well, both series are trying to develop an aero package that enhances the racing, and obviously there's growing pains with both series trying to get it right. And of course, you know, we saw NASCAR's experiment at the All-Star race, and obviously, like you just alluded to, they tested a package at Indy, and obviously, as there's not time to incorporate it, just like NASCAR doesn't have time to incorporate. So yeah, you got to hand it to the sanctioning bodies that they're continually working to improve their product, but it does create problems from time to time.
Oh, absolutely. Now, behind Rossi, we had Willpower, Scott Dixon, Bourdais, and then Newgarden. The other guys that have won races this year, save for Hinchcliffe, who won in Ohio. And then in sixth place, Zach Veach. What a great day for that young man there. Now, Zach had participated in a test at Pocono a few weeks prior, where he was the only Andretti car there. And actually, Alexander Rossi gave Zach a few props for some of the data that he came back with from the test. Said it was very helpful to the entire team. So, Mike, did you get a chance to catch up with Zach there while you were at Pocono this weekend?
Unfortunately, with all the chaos, I did not run into Zach, although I plan to this weekend in Gateway. But going back to that test at Pocono, I did happen to be out there for the day. He was by far the most impressive. It was mainly rookies running. I think Tony Kanaan ran about 6 or 7 laps, same with Sebastian Bourdais. Otherwise, it was just the rookies. And I thought Veach was even more impressive than Robert Wickens was, and I was purely using my phone as a very not accurate timing. But he was impressive all race weekend. He was impressive at the test. I think he's starting to find his groove. The last 3 weeks in a row now, he's had 3 top 10s.
Yeah. I mean, the kid is the real deal. We all felt like he was, and I really feel like he's hitting this series at the right time. I think any sooner he would have been a little too young, but I think he's hitting it at just the right time. He's got just the right partners in there with the 1001 group, providing him the funding that puts him in an Andretti car, and Andretti is at the top of their game this year. Absolutely, in the post Aero Kit era, Andretti is back to that position where they are, toe to toe with Penske and Ganassi in every way possible. So, let's get back to the accident. There's a couple of things that have been said. Actually, I don't know if you like to torture yourself by reading social media comments like I do.
No.
Yeah, I know. So it's like my guilty pleasure. Because everybody all of a sudden is an engineer and an expert and a spinal injury expert. But there's a lot being said about the wall here, and I think the stupidest comment came out of Paul Tracy's mouth, where he said, "Wow, the catch fencing just tore up the car. I would have much rather just gone out of the park." I don't know what he was thinking when he said that, but no, obviously we don't want the cars to fly out of the park. But yeah, the catch fencing has been It's always very damaging to the car if a car gets up that high. We've seen it. Certain wrecks come to mind. Franchitti at Houston, Kenny Brack several years ago, Bobby Allison at Pocono, Jeff Krosnoff in Toronto. All those, resulted in fairly devastating injuries to the driver. But even as you look at if you look at the in-car camera from Hunter Ray's car, Wickens' car goes right over the top of Hunter Ray's head, close enough that it snaps the camera off the roll hoop. And I mean, that's just frightening. And then that again brings up the argument for the head protection, the halo or the windscreen, whatnot. But as I look at this thing, right, Pocono, all the grandstands are on the front stretch, and the Pocono's incidents are generally in the turns. So what's to prevent taking that safer barrier and making it 2 times higher or even 3 times higher around the areas of the track where there's where it's not going to block a spectator view? I mean, it seems like a pretty simple fix when you compare to some of the just crazy ideas people are throwing out there, like putting jet fighter netting up there or plexiglass or, any number of just kind of untested, dim-witted ideas that are coming from non-engineering types. But if you just doubled up the safer or tripled it up on the backstretch there, you're not blocking any sight lines. What do you think about that? Or do you think it's fine the way it is?
Well, I actually read something that proposed that at some tracks I could see that working, like a Pocono where there's no grandstands. Other tracks where there's campgrounds in those areas, it wouldn't work. But just my one comment is 6-7 years ago, there was no catch fencing in the area Wickens hit. If you go back and watch the NASCAR race of, I think, 2010, 2011, Casey Kane was rushing against the trees that were back there when he got up on top of the wall in a multi-car accident. So, in a sense, we're actually, granted, devastating injuries, but we're actually lucky we had the catch fencing there.
Yeah, that's a perfect example. A track at Pocono could make that work. Obviously, money plays a big factor in how that would break down, whether it would be IndyCar and NASCAR saying, okay, we'll help racetracks do this or whatnot. The other interesting suggestion that I came across was changing the catch fence similar to how Indianapolis has it, where they kind of have it slanted at the top. I don't know from a scientific point of view if that makes any difference, but I saw a bunch of people mention that on Twitter today as an idea to make the fencing a bit safer.
Well, it's slanted. It's slanted at
yep.
Pocono. And in that area where if you look at the tape of the crash, the area where he goes up into the fence, there is behind that fence. There's track facilities. You've got some Leland spruce trees, and then you've got a sidewalk or a cart path behind it, and then you come into a facility right close by. So I think that's why they had that. There's either pedestrian or there's pedestrian traffic in that area behind that fence in where Wickens hit. The thing I noticed in the wreck, all the clips I've seen, you can't see the exact moment. You see the TV shows the side by side from the in-car of Hunter Ray, and you see the two cars touch and they get together. Then it pans out and the car's already in the air. I'm assuming they touched wheels because typically that's what happens in the IndyCar race and in open wheel racing. The wheels touch or they climb over the wheels, and that's what gets these cars airborne. With the new system that the IndyCars have with that kind of pan wing under the side pods, that really keeps them on the ground when they don't touch wheels and are essentially catapulted. that way. So I'm assuming from the thing that they touched wheels, and that's what got it up in the air to begin with. And that's always an inherent danger in open wheel racing. I don't know what you can really do to you got to have a catch fence, because the catch fence is there to protect fans, basically. We've seen cars like Kyle Larson's wreck at Daytona several years ago, and Austin Dillon's wreck at Daytona also got up in the fence, but they did keep the cars out of the grandstands. Those at tracks like Daytona, there's also strands of heavy cabling that run from post to post. Obviously, that would not be good for an Indycar, because it'd essentially be like a saw and cut it in half. I don't know what you can do, and on those back parts of the racetrack where you don't have a sight line from fans, you could double the safer barrier, double the wall, and that could in a way be it. But Seth's particularly right. So many of these tracks now, where they don't have grandstands, they sell it as motorhome parking, and they put motorhome or campers right up against almost up against the fence that circles some of the tracks. Vegas and Texas come to mind when you talk about those.
Yeah. Just suffice to say that both IndyCar has been always on the cutting edge of safety, as well as NASCAR too, and that all of this data is going to be looked at very carefully, and that whatever solutions are put in place will be well tested. And they will make a difference. If you just look at where we are today, compared to where we were 20 years ago or 40 years ago, it's so much amazingly more safe. And
Frank,
yes,
Frank, let me make one more point too.
Go right ahead, my man.
Talking about his back or spine injury, I think part of that led to when the tub slammed back down on the ground, because the fence had then sheared away all the suspension on all four corners, and the tub probably landing so hard on the track probably is what got him his back injury.
Most certainly, yeah.
Just assuming that had to be what it was. There's a
photo I saw. It's a freeze frame of the crash, where you can see Wickens' head is almost fully down, almost as if perhaps the Hans device failed. Now, like I said, mind you, I've only seen this on social media. I don't know if the Hans device failed, or if it's just a weird camera angle or what. But I don't know if that would have contributed to that in any way, because they said the injury is what they call, I think it's a thoracic, is that what they call it? Which
that would be in the
upper back, opposite the chest. So, but it was when I looked at that freeze frame, I said, wow, because I've never seen anybody's head bent down since we put Hans devices on the drivers. So,
I tell you, the Hans device, when you talk about that, and I haven't seen the picture, the Hans device really goes under the shoulder belts. The shoulder belts go over it and lock it down on the shoulders. And there's two straps from the Hans device that go to the helmet. And what they do, that limits the helmet's forward movement in a crash. So it kind of contains it, where you have you figure your neck and your spine in a straight line. It keeps them in that in proximity. Let me just say like that. So unless something, it could have been a shoulder belt failure or something. I'm just, of course, this is speculation. Totally, you don't know. I'm not even going to say. I don't even want to use the word failure in any point. But
it's like, again, it could have just be the moment that the picture was snapped. Sometimes pictures can be deceiving too. Yeah, so
they'll tuck in a crash. So remove their hands from the wheel and bring them up to their chest and tuck their head down in the event of a crash, and that could be what we saw as well. So. But it was a violent crash. I tell you what, it was. He's lucky to have survived it at all.
Yeah. So, any of our viewers, or I always say viewers, but I mean listeners. So, but anybody wishing to send Robert a get well card or to wish him well, you can send a card or letter, or whatever you like to send him through the team. Attention, Veronica Knowlton. If you go to the team's Twitter or the team's Facebook, they've got the address there for you right there. Veronica is the PR rep for the team, and she will ensure that Robert gets those. So, again, we are all just hoping for the best, that we see him in a race car again next year, because the guy he's so exciting to watch. He is just so good. It was, if you recall, Gray, when we had Christopher Hinchcliffe on a couple of months ago, and we said, gosh, who would have thought Wickens would have been this good? And he said, we did. So, but, yeah, so it just, I hate it that we're not going to see him for the rest of the season. There's Schmidt-Peterson will have Jack Harvey entered in the third car at Portland and Sonoma, I believe. But that leaves the 6 open for somebody. What do you think, Mike? Are you hearing anything yet? I know Sam said it's really too early to tell, but he did also say that his phone has been ringing off the hook. And I believe, was it Marshall Pruitt speculated that with the amount of damaged cars they have, it's a pay driver probably makes the most sense. So are you hearing anything, Mike? Or
I haven't heard anything remotely pop up other than, I do know, 2 straight weeks Sage Karam has said, I almost have the funding to run. So if he almost has the funding to run, maybe he can find a way to squeeze in that extra money. Although I can't see Sam wanting to run somebody as potentially risky as Sage Karam with his, not so perfect record the last couple of years, especially in that Lexus car last year.
Yeah, I hear you.
I could see somebody, who brings money. Sebastian Saavedra, who ran with them at the end of the last year when Aloshin got the boot. He would be a safe bet and comes with the Gary Peterson AFS money. Somebody like that. I think that's going to be my guess, only because I know he's been around the paddock. I saw, was it Tristan Vautier I saw this weekend? I can't remember. It obviously got a little hectic.
Yeah. Vautier's been around. You even think of a guy like, R.C. Enerson. He tends to be able to throw a dollar or two together. Renee Binder is not slated to be in the Yukos car. His daddy's pockets are deep. But then again, he hasn't really proven to be that spectacular in the car.
But yeah, bring it home in one piece.
Yeah, hopefully, yeah. So,
if you're going just based on, I want to enter the car for, the sponsors to be able to get them their play.
Just
Saavedra, Renee Binder, Kyle Kaiser, maybe if he's got some money.
Yeah.
It's probably a small list. Connor Daly, maybe.
Yeah, Daly. I don't know who's. I know Gabby's back in the Harding car this weekend because Daly's off running.
Yep.
Running at Road America in the Xfinity Series, so I don't know what Harding's plans are for the last 2 races of the season either. I don't know if we'll see Gabby in there or Connor in there, which either one could leave the other one potentially open for Schmidt-Peterson, and we know Connor has run with Schmidt-Peterson. I think he filled in for Hinchcliffe.
Yes,
a couple of years ago, and it did a pretty good job. So that's a possibility too. So, but let's turn our attention to Gateway, and then we'll turn our attention to Bristol. So, Gateway last year, Joseph Newgarden making the pass of the year on Simon right at the end of the race. Good crowd, good event. Everybody was very pleased with it. Going back this year, the word from local St. Louis newspaper that I was looking at is that ticket sales are up from last year, and with still, a couple days before race, so not even counting any walk-up sales. So that's pretty encouraging. So if I'll go with you, Richard, because you've been quiet. So Richard, who would you pick to win at Gateway?
Oh, that's a good question. He was reasonably strong at Pocono. I'd probably go with Scott Dixon.
Okay, all right. Now, Seth, who do you like for Gateway?
I'm going to go with Joseph Newgarden.
Why not? He can win anywhere. So, and Gray.
I'm gonna go with Rossi, but I hope with things looking good at the Gateway for Indycar, ticket sales being good, I hope they can back up last year's show with a good show this time because they don't need to lose any ground.
No, they certainly don't. Yeah,
it's been an up and down year for IndyCar. It seems like all the ground that they would gain last year, they've seemed to lose a little bit in the type of racing that they've had. So I think I hope they go put on a really good show to kind of keep their foothold there at Gateway, keep it strong so they can return next year and grow even more.
Yeah, to be in all honesty, the show that don't tell anybody I said this. The show last year wasn't actually that great. It was kind of boring until Joseph made the pass at the end.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like watching a crappy movie, but then have a twist ending, and you walk out of the theater and say, "Man, that was great."
Right, everybody went away good. And and that's what's leading. That'll help ticket sales for this year. I just hope they can go and put on a good show that gives the fans a treat and build on something there where that's the thing that gets me with IndyCar. We can't develop any consistency in the schedule. We have tracks come on and we lose tracks. You have tracks come on and we lose them. Like I'm speaking of Phoenix. We've got to have some tracks that become staples. Ovals particularly that become staples in the series that we can count on year after year. And that's what they're fighting desperately to get right now, and that's what I think they need to be able to back up some of these shows so they can keep some continuity there.
I agree. Yeah. So Mike, who do you?
I'm gonna go with Will Power. He had a great qualifying run last year, and then spun out on the pace lap to start the race last year?
Right at the beginning, yeah.
I don't think he's going to do that again. He was good at, obviously, he's been good at Pocono. He's been good on almost all the ovals this year, and with the exception of, I think, Phoenix, he wasn't great, but I think he might have gotten crashed out there. So my bet is Will Power, and I think with this new aero kit, similar race to how we saw at Iowa, where it was a fantastic race, I think we will see something very similar this weekend at this intermediate-sized oval.
Yeah, I think if they have a pretty similar setup to what they're going to use, what they used at Iowa, it's going to be a barn burner of a show. I tell you who I'd like to see win, just for all the sentimental reasons that would be a feel good story. I'd love to see Hinchcliffe win.
Yep.
And seeing as how Hinchcliffe won at Iowa, this is not impossible. You know what I mean? This certainly could happen. So I'm going to go out on a limb and I'm going to pick Hinchcliffe. But I just also want to throw in a side note. When I look at the drivers and I look, we have 3 drivers who won 3 races apiece so far this year, and we don't get a lot of that in IndyCar. But if I look at the guys who haven't won yet this year, right? And there's a couple names that just stick out. Simon Pagenaud has not won yet this year, Graham Rahal is usually good for a win a year, sometimes 2. Graham hasn't hit the winner's circle yet, too. So those are some guys that there's, just a couple of races left that I really want to keep an eye on. But I'll be pulling for Hinch this weekend. So
let me ask Mike a question too. I was brought up thing about racetracks and stuff. Saw some reports last week that Richmond could possibly return to the series. Did you hearing anything on that?
Yeah, so it's possible, which would be awesome. I always loved Richmond, and selfishly, it's a track I don't have to take an airplane to. But I don't think it's going to be 2019. I think David Melcher at motorsport.com reported it's looking much more likely for 2020.
Okay.
Yeah, I know they want to get another ISC track on there, and then also Watkins Glen looks likely to come back in maybe 2020. I know they're negotiating. So, but I mean, the Glen is so perfectly suited for the Indycars, you know. Yeah, well, the Glen is just the perfect track in my mind. Anyway, I just love the place. So, but and Richard types in Coda. There have been talks with Coda. As a matter of fact, I think, if I'm not mistaken, the regional exclusivity clause with Texas is no more. It's been dropped, so that opens up to you put a race back in Houston. We could race at Coda. You know,
you just fill the whole calendar with Texas racing.
Well, it's a big state. Yeah, we could have a San Antonio Riverwalk. You know, but anyway, so let's turn our attention to Bristol, because I want to have enough time in the show to preview Formula One, which is going to be back in action this week at Spa. But first off, Gray, why don't you take us through Bristol? We saw Busch win, but the other one, not the guy that's won 7 times this year, but his older brother Kurt, taking his first Bristol win since '06 and his first Cup win since Daytona last year, right?
Yeah, 58 races, I believe, something like that was his streak without a win. But yeah, pretty compelling race, pretty good racing throughout. Kyle Larson gets the pole. And of course, Kyle, is usually strong there. And then we saw different guys go up front. We saw Ryan Blaney lead some. We saw Harvick lead a little bit of the race. We saw different guys run at the front at various times. Kyle Busch, who arguably had one of the strongest cars in the field, got wrecked on lap 3. And had to go to the pits for repairs. And spent a good part of the race 2 laps down, and was able to get back on the race. Get back on the lead lap with about a little over 100 laps to go, and he had a really good car and a shot to win the race at the end before he was taken out in some of that wild racing there inside 50 laps to go. But really good show. We had. Clint Boyer ran good. We had, that's the neat thing about the race that I thought. We had so many cars that would forge to the front at various times. Like I said, Clint Boyer ran good. Blaney ran good. Kyle Busch had a good car coming from the back that, if you watched him a lot, he was putting on a good show. Harvick ran good. Before he had some issues. Several cars, Chase Elliott ran really well. So we had different various strategies and things like that, 2 tires, 4 tires, no tires at all. On a restart there, Kurt was able to get around his teammate Clint Boyer and hold him off for his first win of the year. And he became the 9th different driver to qualify via the win for the playoffs.
And not only that, but Kurt's win, he now has 30 victories in the Monster Energy NASCAR Cup Series. He and Kyle Busch, they're the first brothers to have 30 wins apiece in the Cup Series, which that's just a staggering fact as it is. But we don't know where Kurt's going to be next year, too, because he said that he doesn't know. Gene Haas has said that he wants Kurt to be back, but he's in the dark about it. So he's kind of racing and auditioning at the same time for a possible ride elsewhere.
Well, I'm going to put it to you like this. Winning can cure a lot of ills in a race team, and a lot of uncertainty can be cleared up with wins. I'm not saying that be the case in this situation, but I'm sure it goes a long way with Kurt feeling that he's not going to, would have to look in that mirror pretty hard to step away from Stuart Haas into a team, because unless he got a Joe Gibbs ride or maybe something like that, it would not be a lateral move. It would be a downward move, in my opinion. So I think that win Saturday night changed everybody's view of that situation going forward. I really do.
Well, at the same time, we also don't know exactly what's going on over at Furniture Row Racing. Things are looking better, but there was talk of Truex possibly leaving because he was not, at that time, going to be paid what he's being paid now with 5 Hour Energy leaving.
Mm-hmm.
From my understanding, that things are getting better, and that possibly means another sponsor coming up to replace 5 Hour Energy, but there's no official word on that.
Yeah, you would think as often as Truex wins, they really wouldn't have a problem slapping somebody's logo on the car and getting a big check, but it's just a sign of the economy,
It's a sign of the times.
Yep, you got Lowe's leaving Jimmy Johnson, You got the guy, the reigning champion, who's still winning races left and right. Looking at taking a pay cut. It's just it's sad in a way, but it's reality.
Yeah, it's an economic reality. It's what we're seeing, and it's driven by the TV ratings and attendance, and sponsorship dollars are affected by those two things. And basically, we've talked about this on this show. The sport is going through an adjustment right now, and some of these drivers that have been household names for the last decade or so, in my opinion, they've signed their last big mega contract, and they're going to be in for an adjustment when their time comes up to re-sign with some of these teams, because the money's not going to be there, and the car owners will not be able to sign them to the same amounts that they did previously. So we're going to see more of that, and I think basically these guys have to like anybody else, they're going to go where they get paid, and obviously. We could see it. I'm sure. Truex knows he's in the best situation he'll ever be in right now. But he's got to look at the future. And unless and again too, like I said about Kurt Busch, there's not many rides that he can go where he'll move laterally. It'll be a downward move if he went anywhere else. And I know they realize that too. But a lot of things to consider. But like Seth said, if they can. Garner a replacement sponsor for that, then they can continue on.
And speaking of adjustments, 2 drivers actually announced that they're stepping away from full-time competition at Bristol. Casey Kane and Elliott Sadler. Both are looking to spend more time with their family. Casey Kane, he's in the Levine family racing car, the 95, which is leaving its alliance with RCR, supposedly going to Toyota. At least that's where the rumors have it going. So that could be a upward move if it actually does go to Toyota with the way Toyota is running.
And I have heard, too, that that could also – I've heard several rumors, too, that they could do a similar situation as to what Furniture Row did with the 77 last year with Eric Jones. That could actually open up a ride to further develop Christopher Bell and keep him in the Toyota camp. I've heard that's one rumor I've heard leaning toward that ride. But I found it kind of surprising that Casey would step away. What'd you think of that? Make of that, Seth?
Honestly, it caught me off guard. I mean,
me too.
I spoke to Casey earlier this year at Bristol during the spring race weekend. And he seemed somewhat distant then, and I just put that off as because when I was talking to him about Jason Leffler for a piece I was working on at the time. But even about just racing that weekend and upcoming races, he was just distant, almost disconnected to it.
It seemed to me like he's just become disenchanted with the whole political deal in the NASCAR garage and how it goes. That's what I took from it. He's just become disenchanted with the sport.
Yeah, and I think he feels like he's. Wait, was 2 years ago he won the Brickyard a couple years ago, but still wasn't able to. Last year still wasn't able to save his ride. Now he's again, he took the non-lateral move to go with the Levine family, and just available spots for him to win. I think it's probably, getting in the car every day at his stage in his career, where he's 38 years old, it's just got to be demotivating to get in a car where you're running mid to back field, and you're only occasionally going to get a shot at the front. So,
although I will say his sprint car program over in the World of Outlaws is making waves. Brad Sweet actually just won the Knoxville Nationals in one of Casey's cars. So, in one area of motorsports, he's thriving.
Yeah, well, he may just be disenchanted with NASCAR. I mean, he's not leaving his sprint car team behind. So
exactly.
But yeah, it's funny when I read that he was 38. It's like I can't believe how time flies. That every time I look at him, I still think he's this young guy. But
but you look at all that's going on since then. I mean, he started out and he was with Evernham when Evernham's team was a mainstay in the sport, and they've been gone a while. So, yeah, I mean, it's what Richard, what'd you make of Casey's announcement?
Not a huge surprise, as you say. You go from a team like Hendrick Motorsport, then and again, no disrespect to LFR, they're not going to be winning every week, And it must be difficult for the guys to sort of make that progression from a top team into a lower, tier team. And he could, he's not going to get a top drive, even if he, dug up some trees at LFR. All these big teams now have their young driver programs, and the Christopher Bells and the Eric Joneses and the guys like that. So as soon as he left Hendrick, he's basically on a downward spiral, and as difficult as it is, these guys have got to realise that, and you see some of the, even like what happened to Robert Wickens last weekend. Do the guys really want to take those risks week in, week out? It's I'm not surprised, and I think he's a pretty well-liked guy around the garages, but from a commercial standpoint, is he going to be missed? Probably not massively. So,
there's somebody there to take the seat, that's for sure.
Oh, of course there will be. And it's, the natural evolution of the sport. And, NASCAR's a little bit unique in the motorsport world in that, some of these drivers do have a reasonably long shelf life. But, it's I'd say hopefully it'll bring a new kid in who can bring excitement and fresh ideas to the sport. So,
hey, I got a question I want to ask everybody in about this. We don't have a cup race this weekend, and we've only got 2 races left before we go to the playoffs. We've got Darlington a week from Sunday, and then we've got the Brickyard, and then we go into the playoffs. Currently, we have 9 winners in Cup right now. With 2 races to go, do you think we'll see another winner to make it 10 races going into the playoffs? What do you guys individually think?
I hope so, because Keselowski hasn't won one yet. So I think he deserves a win. But it doesn't look likely. Each and every week it's Harvick Busch or Truex, flip a coin, and then you have the occasional odd winner here and there. Clint Boyer's had a good season, but I really would like to see Team Penske get a win there. I'd like to see. Who's the other?
Well, you got Blaney. Blaney,
yeah. And
Eric Almirola,
Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson
hasn't
He hasn't won this year either. So I think all those guys are capable of getting a win. So,
Richard, you think we'll get another winner?
I really don't think you will. I think you look at the tracks, and both of them are unique tracks, and they both require a certain skill set and a skill level. I mean, if you're going to pick anybody. Maybe Darlington's going to throw up a bit more of a curveball than Indy, but I doubt it. I think it's pretty much, locked in. As you say, maybe Kyle Larson could, get in the winner's circle at Darlington. But then, is there anybody that stands out for Indianapolis? There's nobody that's great around there.
Yeah. What do you think, Seth?
I wouldn't be surprised to see Jimmy Johnson or another Hendrick driver that hasn't win at Darlington, just with the uptick in performance that Hendrick has had.
True.
And also the uptick in Chevy has had in general. I wouldn't be surprised to see Kyle Larson And just a note on Kyle Larson and Chip Ganassi Racing, they still don't have an OSS. They've been relying on the one that Hendrick just received about a month ago.
Okay.
And they've been running pretty good throughout the entire year.
Yeah,
the 42 times.
Yes, they have. To me, I think if a Chevrolet is going to win, it could be at Indy. And you look at the number of people who haven't cracked victory lane. You know, Frank just mentioned Keselowski, but Denny Hamlin, he's going to be the defending winner going to Darlington. He hasn't won. Blaney hasn't won. Who else we got out there?
Larson, McMurray.
Larson and Johnson are the two I'm thinking about. So, you know, there's 4 or 5 guys right there that that were winners last year that have not won this year. So yeah, we've coming down to 2 races to go. We'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, and I can't forget William Byron. How strong he was at Indy in the Xfinity race last year.
Yeah, it was with that trick aero package.
It was.
Yeah, but I mean, it's going to give him a level of confidence going back to that track. Is all I'm saying.
But I tell you what, that cup car will get your attention.
I'm sure it will. Yeah.
Byron's shown some flashes this year, but I still think he's still got a ways to go up the development ladder before he's ready to win on this level.
All right.
Although I was going to say maybe Suarez with how well he ran at Pocono this year.
Yeah, that's another guy that could knocking on the door.
Yeah,
he's got one of the 4 corners down, hasn't he?
Yep.
That's funny, Richard. All right, so listen, I want to save enough time to talk about Formula One. So again, like I say, the Cup guys are off this weekend. The Xfinity guys will be in Road America. Connor Daly will make his NASCAR debut. And there's a couple. And
Bill Elliott comes out retirement.
Yep, Bill Elliott, and there's a couple other good ringers entered in there.
Catherine Legg.
Yep.
Davison.
And James Davison will be back at Xfinity. Yeah, Davison did good at Mid Ohio.
Yeah, he was quick, wasn't he?
He was quick. Yeah, he got wrong pit stop strategy, I believe. So
yeah, he got turned at one point, didn't he?
Something like that, yeah. So, I mean, it's during my nap. I usually take a nap in the middle of NASCAR races. So.
And the trucks are up in Canada at Canadian Tire Motorsports Park.
Always a good race.
And that's their first race of the playoffs.
Yep,
always a good fight as well.
Yep, always a good fight, yeah. So, but we got guys, we've got about 8 minutes left. Richard, Formula One done with their break. We've had a lot of driver movement.
Yep.
Pierre Gasly confirmed to Red Bull this week. Take Ricciardo's seat. So, good old Pierre Gasly from Wacky Races. I'm glad to see him moving up the ladder. But we're headed to Spa. So let's preview Spa a little bit. That's one of the longest and most wonderful, perfect tracks in the world.
Well, it's currently the longest track on the Formula One calendar. It's got that sort of nostalgia about it. You know, they say that, you know, the hills and the trees around there talk, and you can just the atmosphere of that place is something magical in many, many ways. It's always, you know, the weather's always such a huge variable around there. I mean, I can't remember the number, but it's something like 90% of races there have rain at some point in the weekend, and hopefully actually during the race itself always throws up a bit of a curveball, which makes it exciting.
And sometimes we have rain on part of the track and dry on the rest.
Big. Yeah, it's so long, it's fantastic place. You know, some of the driver market's starting to settle down. Of course, you know, now with Fernando leaving McLaren, you know, Carlos Sainz going into replace him there's a lot of question marks over Stoffel van Dorn's long-term future there. They're running Lando Norris this coming weekend he's replacing Alonso in one of the free practice sessions. So that'll be, you know, is that a sort of, a test for next season? Is that an audition for him? Not sure. I think it's a little bit early for him, but if the kid's quick enough, you put him in. then that sort of still leaves the 2 or 3 teams looking at drivers for next year. Toro Rosso, obviously with Gasly going to Red Bull, that strengthens Brendan Hartley's position for a 2019 seat. Considering,
yeah, but isn't Hartley sort of still in the hot seat? I'm hearing that
well,
they're not exactly thrilled with him, or
they're not. But what other options do you do? There's talk of 2 of their young drivers going to Super Formula next year rather than stepping up into Formula One. I mean, they have to hire young drivers into that team, really. Otherwise, that defeats the purpose of having the team. Are they going to go out and sign a Kevin Magnussen or something like that? Probably not. You audition them for the Red Bull senior team there. You've now seen the saviour, if you like, of Force India with Lance Stroll's father buying into the team. So you'd imagine that means Stroll is moving on to Force India next year. There's talk that Perez has already signed his contract, so that leaves Ocon out at Force India. Does he go to Williams to replace Stroll? Where does that leave Sergei Sorokin, who, in all fairness, has been pretty poor? There's money there, but he hasn't exactly dug up any trees as the kid. So, that's all a big unknown as to what you're seeing at Williams. And this is really starting off that sort of midfield silly season now at Spa, and there could be some interesting moves. Jean-Eric Vergne in an interview says that he's been contacted by a Formula One team about a potential ride for 2019, and it's not Red Bull. So you can't see him going back to Toro Rosso. Potentially he could be going to Williams. That would be an interesting move, I would have thought, for him. But yeah, it's all starting to bubble up. And of course, hey, we haven't even talked about the championship standings and, the battle between Hamilton and Vettel. You think really that if Vettel's got a chance of winning the championship, he has to win in Spa. They have to be quick, they have to be competitive, they have to, come back off this summer vacation, in the right frame of mind and not make any mistakes. You saw for almost the previous half dozen races before the summer break, the car that was the fastest car at the weekend didn't win the race, which was a crazy set of circumstances because, Formula One can be pretty predictable at the best of times, but I don't think you could have, after looking at, the practice times on any of those last half dozen races, predicted who would have won the race. So it's been pretty entertaining, and hopefully that'll continue. But I think Ferrari need to come back strong. There's been a lot of talk of some of the little tricks and pieces they've been doing. I was reading an article today where they cover the roll hoop camera with an ice bag before the car leaves the garage or at the start of the race, which people are, some people sort of questioning what they're doing there.
You said they put ice on the camera?
Yeah, so they have a big bag of ice in a big yellow bag that they put on the camera on the rollover hoop. Now they say, it's to cool the camera. Now no other team's having an issue with the cameras overheating. There's a couple of theories about that. One, when they put that on top of the camera, when the driver's not in the car, you can't see what's inside the cockpit because the bag obscures the camera. And secondly, it's a complete decoy. So
well, if you ask me, the only reason you would put a bunch of ice on the camera because you want to shoot some really cool video.
Oh boy. Oh boy. But no, anyway, moving on.
Finally, just a little laugh. That's all I ask.
It was a sympathy laugh, don't worry.
Thank you.
But no, it's going to be great to see. It's going to be interesting, and you sort of want to, with all the talk of all the driver movements, which as entertaining and as its own little sort of, soap opera on the side, that is, it'd be good to actually get back to some racing and see where everybody sits.
All right, now speaking of getting to the race, we've got just about enough time to go around the water cooler here and everyone get a pick for Spa. So I'm gonna start with you, Mike, since you've been quiet since we started talking about NASCAR. I don't know if you've left the building or what, but Mike,
I'm here.
Do you have a pick for Spa?
Yeah. I'm gonna go with the complete shot in the dark here and go Daniel Ricciardo.
Okay, you just stole my pick. Gray.
Vettel.
Okay.
Ferrari's got to bounce back, like Richard said.
Absolutely. Seth, who do you like for Spa?
Lewis Hamilton.
Okay. Now Richard.
Kimi.
Okay, now who does that leave me? Max Verstappen then. That's who I'll take. So anyway, that's it. We are out of time. I want to thank you, Gray, Seth, Mike, and Richard for coming on. I want to thank Hoobazoo Radio Network and iHeartRadio for hosting us. I want to thank all you folks that tune in and listen to us every week. Until next week, have a good night. Thanks.
WHOOBAZOO, that's Hoobazoo.com.
Enter website.